I'm answering the question that 40-year-old men and women ask themselves. What if I had taken a right turn instead of a left turn?
Welcome to the most exciting adventure of your life. Welcome to a new way of living, and welcome to the Fierce Planet Adventures podcast.
So along our journey, we've learned that the stories we tell ourselves, that society, the media, politicians, advertisers, and even our families tell us, we tend to internalize and identify with. But when closely examined, we see that most of these stories are often false beliefs and assumptions that are actually what keep us trapped in cycles of fear, dependency, and in unhealthy physical and mental habits.
Take a moment to ponder this. How many times a day through advertising or the media do you hear, do you suffer from, have you been exposed to, all you need to do to be happy is, insert product name, don't miss out, join now or buy now. The good news is that we don't have to stay trapped in the matrix. We can take back our lives, our minds, our health, and our happiness.
Hi, I'm Casey.
And I'm Andy.
We're a married couple on a mission to inspire and guide 1 million people to live a life of purpose, passion, and self-mastery through the 5 mountains of cutting-edge development.
Today we're talking with Dan Cerrillo of Spartan 7 Adventure. Dan served as a Navy SEAL with multiple combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. After leaving the Navy, Dan was selected as one of the founding members of Paul Allen's executive protection team. During his tenure at Vulcan Inc., he founded CrossFit Bellevue, the largest, most equipped CrossFit training center on the West Coast, as well as Lake Hills CrossFit, CrossFit Interbay, and CrossFit Ad Alta. Dan now serves on the board of directors for the Navy SEAL Fund and is the Tennessee ambassador for the Navy SEAL Foundation. Dan's also one of the founding members of Global Support and Development, a privately funded humanitarian outreach team. And from 2008 to 2016, Dan served as the director of training for SEALFit.com, helped expand and develop the 50-hour endurance event Kokoro, SOF Immersion Academy, and Turning Steel. Dan is also an accomplished high school football strength conditioning and linebacker coach, where until 2016, he was part of the Bellevue Wolverine coaching staff and won an unprecedented 13 state championships and a 2013 national championship. Dan now serves as the chief of staff for the American Addiction Center and is the largest addiction treatment company in the world. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Great.
Good. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we usually like to start off by asking our guests, what are you grateful for today?
It's funny. I literally just talked about this yesterday. I'm grateful for the gift and the honor of my children. I've spent a lot of time lately really reflecting on my children's lives and the evolution of which they've come. And I'm in this really amazing place to be able to look at each one of them and go, holy crap. I mean, they're just, they just have me kind of speechless and in awe most times because the things they've accomplished and just what kind of people they are, and for me, coming from my background, the way I was raised, opposite, obviously 100% difference. And I really sit there. I'm like, if I did one thing right, I did that right, so I'm very thankful for that.
Thanks for sharing. Dan, I'd like to hear about your journey. What started you down the warrior's path?
I think I've always kind of gone down the warrior's path. All my uncles served in the military, and for most of my life, my mom was married to a few different military men. And for most of my life, I really wanted to be, go to Naval Academy, be a pilot, et cetera. And so the military was just what I was going to do from a very young age. And then my senior year, I applied to the Naval Academy, got denied. And I became very anti-military, became very rebellious, just kind of threw my hands up in the air and said, who cares about anything, And I did that for about a year and a half. Attempted to go play college football. Didn't do very well, and was essentially going down a nowhere path. And my girlfriend on a Friday night took me to see Navy SEALs. I saw Navy SEALs on Saturday. I went to a party, got in a huge, massive brawl, probably a 20-person brawl, and on Monday morning, I was in the recruiter's office saying, I need to get out of here.
If you've been listening to our podcast or following us on socials, it's probably no surprise to you that I've been dealing with back issues for many years. And I want to take a moment just to tell you about something that I found that's helped me with my flexibility and durability and mobility. And that's called Kokoro Yoga, somatic warrior training. It's not just yoga, it also includes Tai Chi, Qigong, visualization, meditation, and breathwork practices. Practices such as Fit Warrior, Fighting Warrior, which incorporates functional fitness and some martial arts movements. And it's been just a really great way for me to maintain some flexibility and durability as I move through our challenges when we go and do Spartan races and climb mountains. So if this sounds like it's something that could help you out, check it out. The link's in the show notes.
So
Nice. So the Navy, is that the movie with Charlie Sheen?
yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
It's funny. One of my buddies posted a Father's Day, like a Father's Day post to Charlie Sheen yesterday. Like, thanks, second dad. You know, I am where I am because of you. So, yeah, the movie. Yeah.
Very nice. Oh, that's a great story. Thank you. So Spartan 7 Adventure, can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do? It sounds like there's several aspects of that business. And, why did you why was it founded?
Yeah. So it's funny is what Spartan 7 Adventure is really today is what I've learned over the years. And so we started the business. It's called Turning Steel. And, me being a steel fit coach, I always kind of ask what's next, right? We take guys on the beach. We do I consider what we did back then as buds training, not SEAL training whatsoever. And then I would say, what's next? What else are we going to do with these guys or, people? And nobody ever answered that question. So finally I invented Turning Steel, and it was at a request from one client. He was a very high net worth individual, did a lot of outdoor hunting. And he's like, hey man, if I ever get trapped in Alaska or somewhere, I don't know how to survive. I don't even know what to do. And he was always like, take me to the range, do this. And I'm like, I can't do that in a day. And so I decided to use his ranch in Montana and had a 10-day course. So the clients flew in on a Friday, flew out on a Sunday, and really threw the 9 to it, private plane, meals, and we did SEAL training. And the way SEALs train is we train very hard, but the amenities are good. All right. And so I wanted all these people, high net worth people, to be able to come in, have hard training, but have a great place to sleep and great meals. And we did that for 3 years. And over the course of that 3 years, I discovered that 10 days is just too long. It's very hard for somebody to get away from their family for 10 days. And we had partnered with Rock Creek Ranch, so the wives and children could go next door if they wanted to. And it just, we started out with 32 clients. The highest we ever got was 50 clients. And then the final year, I think we had 5 clients. There wasn't just enough advertising. It was a lot of work to get those things done. Mm-hmm. And so when I sold that business and then, got the urge to do Spartan 7, I really looked at Spartan 7 and I said, what did I do wrong? And what do I want to do? And so in the world of what I do, everybody does tactical training. All right. So somebody's teaching tactic. And I'm the guy who will sit here and tell you right now that it is, in my opinion, almost impossible to teach somebody tactics in 2 days. You will give them tactics, they will learn it, but did you actually teach them? Did they retain the knowledge? Because what I found is that everything I teach, when I bring the clients back, we do have to repeat everything we've done again. And I just, over the years, I've said, it took me so many years to learn what I'm doing. Instead of me trying to shove tactics down the throat and say, this is the way to do it, I turn it into adventure. And so we do teach skills, but really the number one thing that I've always said about Spartan 7 is that I'm answering the question that 40-year-old men and women ask themselves. What if I had taken a right turn instead of a left turn? And so I took a right turn through the military, and now I've taken a left turn into business. Other people took a left turn into business, and now they're at this place. And what I do is I try to answer that question. And so Spartan 7, instead of being a tactics course, is an adventure course. We teach a lot of the same things, but really what we're doing is taking aspects of, say, close quarters combat, and we're turning it into home defense. We're showing them how to do it as a team, but also as an individual. And I'm taking the world from executive protection of singular and then team-based, putting it together, then also applying the lessons I've learned through business of leadership, communication, difficult problem-solving skills, and injecting that into the adventure. But the big thing is if they screw up, I don't really care. right? It's still an adventure and it's still fun. They're learning. There is no beat downs. There's no push-ups. Their consequences are very direct, reciprocal information back to them. Like, you screwed that up. Or a lot of what I really do is, this is you. This is who you are in a worst case scenario. So we record a lot of video and just a lot of feedback. And what I've tried to do is do things with people who probably would never have access to. And that's the big beauty of Spartan 7 is we have access to facilities that civilians simply aren't allowed to train at. I have access to them because I know the owners of those facilities, and we donated a lot of money back to the Navy SEAL Fund. And I think the owners understand what I'm trying to do. Most of my staff is in recovery, which will kind of lead, as our conversation goes. Most of my staff is very professional. They've been with me for now 10 years. We all work together at the other company and we followed each other. And since we're not trying to push envelopes, there's a lot of videos out there of guys doing stuff that I'm just like, what are you thinking? We don't try to do that. We're trying to be the best at basics. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, do things that are applicable. And we're answering adventures. So anybody can go skydiving. You can go do that. We're going to skydive, and then we're going to go on a mission. We're going to go, anybody can go snorkeling and diving. We're going to snorkel and dive and then go on a mission. Right. And we're going to go use facilities. We have an adventure coming up in the middle of July where we're going to Shaw's shooting, which is completely closed to the public. And it's probably the most incredible shooting facility in the world. We're taking 32 clients there. And the emphasis is on shooting, situational shooting in a realistic environment. So you can go teach paper and get people shooting this big on a paper. I can do that, but it's boring. I want people to be shooting at targets that are 1 foot away, 300 yards away, moving. They're steel, they're reacting, they're coming to you, out of car windows, underneath cars, out of top of buildings, in canyons, coming out of the water. That's what Shaw's has to offer. And be able to do it in a safe environment with really incredible guest speaker coaches. So some of our guest speaker coaches are people who get on stage and charge $50,000 an hour to speak. And our clients are with them for an entire weekend. Right. So that's the access of coaches we have at our disposal. And the facilities, putting the two together, my thing is give it an awesome environment with incredible coaching. Nicole Carroll, Brian Contosh, Chris Smith, Matt Bissonette, Dave Rutherford, the who's who of coaches that are out there. Bring them in, put them together, and let those coaches do what they do. And those coaches are you guys are coaches. They're so well at finding a way to communicate with the individual in a group environment. The feedback we get is tremendous. Most of our clients are repeat clients. We don't do any marketing. There's no media. There's no advertising. It's all referral based. And we sell out every single event. And we have a lot of fun. And that's what Turning Steel used to be, a profitable entity. Spartan 7 is a profitable entity, but that's not how I make my living. And so I do very few events, where with the other business, I was trying to do an event a weekend. Now, last year we did 9 events. This year we're doing 6. And probably next year we'll do 4.
Wow.
Right. And they're super exclusive. And it's fun. And that's what I need it to be for me, is because I'm going there to teach. I love coaching. I also know I cannot coach on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm coaching football on a daily basis. And I'm starting to get burned down on it, because we're in spring ball. I know my limitations after 15 years of coaching of what I'm good at. And so I keep Spartan 7 what I'm good at. And right about that time where I'm like, okay, my fun meter's getting pegged, we're done for a while. And I've hired guys to do the day-to-day coaching for the clients, and I involve myself in it, but that's not how I have to be involved, So yeah, that's what Spartan 7 is. A lot of fun. That's really what it comes down to. It's an adventure. We do adventurous things in a SEAL format. Mm-hmm. And we just have a hoot, man. Meals are great. The facilities are ridiculous. Jail Bar Ranch, if you ever get a chance to visit it, we have one in October. It is a 7-star resort in America that is closed to the public, and absolutely amazing.
Several thoughts came to mind as you're describing what you do with Spartan 7 Adventure. And I love the fact that, you teach the basics, right? And that's something that, especially when it comes to tactics, it's a diminishing skill set, right? If you don't teach it, if you don't practice it, if you don't drive it all the time, over time, you lose it, right? So don't go too into depth with all the details and all the fancy whiz bangs, right? Just keep it keep it basic, and that's great. The other thing that you said that I thought was really awesome is having fun with it, right? And that's one of our attributes here with Fierce Planet Adventures is, look, if we're not having fun with what we're doing, if it becomes a drag, it's just not worth doing. Life is too short. There's too much energy to be spent on positivity and fun things in life. You just find that place to be happy and have fun with what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's been the focus of my life for the last 3 years. Is really just how slow can I go? My slow is fast for some people, but it's slow for me. And being able to just enjoy the life that I live now in a very peaceful and tranquil environment. And so a lot of people who have my background a lot of them believe they understand business and how business works, but not a lot of them do. And so me being an executive for a company, the stress involved, I'm not sweating. I never sweat, right? But the stress involved with keeping a $500 million company going is massive. And so what you don't want to do is take people from that environment into an environment where they're stressed again. Now we'll cause them stress, but it's completely and totally opposite of this. I want them to come put their hair down in a safe, quiet place amongst people who are like-minded and of the same executive level, so they can correspond and cross train, whatever. But I want them to come and really put their hair down. And that's kind of I think that's what we've been able to create. Is it's a way for our executives to get away and have a working vacation where they're learning, but at the same time, the feedback we get from them is just, I know that we're on the right track, and also know when we veer off the wrong track.
Friends, if what we're discussing today, the 5 domains of cutting edge human development, sounds interesting to you and you want to experience it for yourself, a great place to start is the Unbeatable Challenge. You can try it for free now. There's a link in the show notes, and it's a great way to really jumpstart your 5 domain training and become really clear on your goals for this year and how to crush them. We did this challenge earlier this year, and it was a great way to find clarity and redefine our mission, our purpose. And Casey and I also used it as an alignment piece in our marriage to make sure that we were on the same page. So the link is in the show notes. You can try it for free now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Take action.
Sounds like a lot of what Spartan 7 focuses on. Sounds like a lot of mental type training. I think I saw on the website you refer to it as mental readiness. Is that kind of the same thing as mental toughness?
So yes and no. And so, for me, the mental toughness comes in 2 aspects, because I think a lot of times people will refer to mental toughness as a guy like David Goggins. Like, go do really hard things and have a mean face. Okay, that yes, absolutely. But the guy who sits in the office next to me is one of the most mentally tough people I've ever met in my life. And he didn't go do that. Mental toughness to me is doing hard things often until they become normal. And it doesn't mean hard things as physical. A lot of people are like, I'm physical. Well, you take a lot of athletes who are in the gym and they never go outside the gym to test what their fitness is in a mentally tough environment, right? I can tell you numerous stories, and won't name names, of taking high-level CrossFit athletes, CrossFit Games athletes, taking them out of the gym into an environment where it's rainy, cold, sleety, and they completely and utterly self-destruct. Yet they go on podcasts and they talk about mental toughness. And so mental toughness isn't just physical. Mental toughness is going to a company that's going through bankruptcy and sleeping in your office for 3 straight days to solve a financial equation that everybody else has thrown their hands up about. All right. My boss, I have more respect for him than probably any SEAL I ever served with, because I got to work side by side with him through the most difficult situation I ever encountered. And, we never sweat. We weren't lifting anything heavy. It was excruciating mental games of trying to solve a massive financial problem. And so we do preach a lot of mental toughness. We really apply it to what do you do in life and talk about what they face. But really, when we talk about focus, of how, when you're in a very tough situation, how to focus in during that. And so I talk about heightened sense of awareness. I talk about, because you have paranoia, obviously, but heightened sense of awareness. We also talk a lot about front sight focus, which is a shooting term, but I talk about front sight focus and then how to eat a pie. And if you eat a pie and you shove it in your face, it gets all over your face, all over your shirt. Eat a small piece of a pie, one bite at a time. And then when you're focusing on that one thing in that moment, you're able to solve it. Even though the macro exists, you focus on the macro becomes solvable, right? And that's really the message that we preach at Spartan 7. And then the final message we speak is, how are you communicating, right? Are you dictatorial in your communication, which there's a time and place for, but are you doing it all the time and then wondering why your team is not responding, right? Are you compassionate and empathetic during your communication? Are you too soft doing it? Trying to find that happy medium of what leadership communication is about, right? Because you can be a poor leader with great communication. You can be a great leader with crap communication. It's trying to find where you fit into there. And what I do is, at Spartan 7, there's a couple of events where we put them in places where communication fails. We just did it 2 weeks ago with a private event. And right in that moment when they're failing, stop. Look at what you're doing. Are you solving the problem? Think about how your voice and fluctuations are going. Think about the response. You are creating the stimuli for your team just by your voice. And so we discuss a lot about that, of how your message is delivered, how it's received, and the output and volume in which you deliver it. And it's fun to do that because all of us on our team work in big business as well. And then we're also former special operations guys, and then be able to deliver that message to executives saying there really is no difference between us and you. The difference is we've learned to communicate in an effective way to solve very difficult problems. Here's some tools to help you.
Yeah, big difference. Mental front side focus, right? And keeping it just dialed into what's exactly in front of you, what you need to focus on to keep moving your mission forward at that moment in time. I love it. Now that you've defined it for us, do you have any tips for somebody how to cultivate that mental readiness or mental toughness?
Yeah, it's funny is that it's the opposite message of CrossFit, right? And so CrossFit, we always say never have a routine. Well, for me, that actually caused me chaos. So without control, you have chaos. And the control is an illusion, obviously, but if you completely disregard control, it's just chaos. So for me, the tip that I try to teach the people who want to listen is, what is your routine? Not your daily routine. What is your morning routine from the moment your eyes open till the time you are ready to go to work? My routine is absolute. It never, ever changes day to day. And the reason it doesn't change is when it does change, it throws a lot of chaos into my day, right? As simplistic as ironing a shirt, how that routine goes. And what I've discovered is that if you start focusing on moments of the day, it really takes you back to when you get into chaos. I always say, what's your zero? We'll bring it back to zero. My zero is my morning. The way I wake up in the morning is absolute. I don't ever rush at anything that I do. Everything is in order. And it starts really with the understanding of what is the most important thing in my life to me. And the most important thing in my life to me is my beloved, right? My beloved went through my career with me. And I don't believe she was a priority for me during that moment in time. So for the last 3 years, my thing is, do not rush out of bed. She's sleeping, hold her, be with her, spend time with her, and then understand that that's the only good thing that's ever been in my life, right? And so I spend time with her even though she's asleep, and then I begin my day. I do that. I know when I read my paper, I know when I take my shower, my workout, all the way until the time I arrive in my office. And as soon as I get in the parking lot, my routine kind of ends at this point. And I'd say to myself two things. And every single day that I pull in my office, I say to myself two things. One, my problems aren't their problems. My problems are not their problems. Two, make 7 people smile. And I found that I don't really have problems anymore, right? Like I've done things that we talk about all the time. I've eliminated distractions. I've eliminated people. And I've understand that somebody else's chaos isn't my chaos, right? The flip side is when you try to make other people smile, it's really impossible to be a jerk, right? And I know that I've been a jerk for many, many years. I walked around with a scowl on my face. I used to have a routine when I get on a plane, sunglasses on, headphones on, asshole mode in full effect. That's what I would say. And I would post about it and everything, like no talking to anybody. And what I discovered was that made me very miserable. It made me very angry, made me full of hatred, right? And by doing the complete opposite, it forces me to get into conversations with people where I've never been in conversations. It forces me to give compliments to people, very obscure compliments. Nice shoes. I like your shirt. Something kind to say to somebody else, which is very, for me now, normal, but in the beginning, very, very weird. And it's created everything that I have today is based on those two things. I'm the same guy I was 5 years ago on the verge of bankruptcy. The difference is back then I was a drunk, full of hatred, anger, and rage. Today I'm clean and sober, and I'm not full of anger, hatred, and rage. Same person, just a different outlook on life of what drove me to that to what it is now. And so I think that people focus on routine and they focus on how they get up out of the morning, right? You control the rest of your day. And then the flip side is I have a routine when I come home. Once I come home, my workday is over. I sit in my driveway, I finish my phone calls, I finish my email, whatever I have to finish in my driveway before I walk in. And as soon as I walk in, Tom Shea taught me this, I give 10 minutes to her. So she'll say, how was your day? No. How was your day? And I ask a random question to get her to talk because she's been waiting all day, right? My day is the same. It's just there's issues, there's mountains, there's hurdles, there's valleys. I solve problems. That's what my job is. And I come in, and by doing that, I have gone from work Dan to husband, father. And it's a very massive transition. And I literally refuse to answer my phone unless certain numbers call. I will answer the phone. Other than that, I just ignore it. I ignore texts. I don't do any of the Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger. You can message me on those things. I'll get to you when I get to you. Electronic messages to me are just mail that you click a stamp, put it in an envelope, and it mails. I'll get to you when I get to you. You call me if you're somebody who I, one, feel like speaking to, or two, need to speak to, I'll answer the phone. But when I'm home, I'm a family man, and that's my secondary routine. And those things have created just a lot of normalcy and a lot of peace in my life. I think people should really focus on that.
The tactic that something that you said here was make 7 people smile, and clearly our backgrounds aren't the same, but the stressors that people feel, whatever their chosen profession or vocation is, probably are very similar in the way we internalize things. And I did the same thing, right? Taking that moment to go, when I'm having a bad day, when I'm not feeling very energetic, or I'm getting a little stressed, just get out of the office and just talk to people and make them smile. And that was something that was very helpful in kind of maintaining that equilibrium and that positive mindset for me in a previous career. So thank you. I agree. That's a great way to boost your energy.
It is, I like the feeling that I have today a lot more than the feeling I had 10 years ago. It just seems like everything is very easy now for me. Conversations are easy. Complimenting people is easy. And I think there's so many people who are wanting, humans need interaction, right? We're not solitary beings. We need interaction. I think so many people have this wall up. They're so scared to interact, to say the wrong things. And just a simple hello and a thank you, it's so few now. Like here in Tennessee, it's all the time. You go to California, nobody says hello. Nobody says thank you. And so when you do that, I think you kind of take people off guard. You kind of start a conversation with them, and it makes things better, I think. So
we've got stories in that we've talked about from traveling across the country, doing our adventures. We've actually recognized that same thing, where in some areas of the country, you say hello to somebody and they look at you like you're from a different planet. And here in Tennessee, we agree it's a completely different atmosphere. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, getting back to mental toughness, your routine now, how is that different from maybe your routine when you were serving in the Navy?
No, what's funny is I think that in the military, I had an absolute routine as well, right? But I didn't understand it back then. It was just work, right? Like I had to go through my gear, had to make sure my stuff was in order, timelines, but I was always working on my gear. My routine was, okay, every Sunday, all my gear gets laid out. I label everything, boom. Prior to a mission, there's a mission checklist of gear. And so I had a routine that I didn't even realize was routine. And so when I think my life went into this dark chaos, and my chaos is pretty well documented. I was very hidden, for one. My wife got very sick, and my businesses were starting to decline. This happened all at once, and it caused me to just really lose equilibrium for about 3 years. And my reaction to my wife being sick was to drink. All right, now, as a SEAL, drinking is part of our culture. I just took drinking to a different level, right? It became the bottle under the bed type drinking, convincing myself I wasn't an alcoholic because I didn't drink on Mondays until you start drinking on Mondays. And so during that time, everything was chaos. And the way I knew that was my workbench and my closet. So because I'm a militaristic person, my closet looks like I'm still in the military. Well, during that darkness, my closet was just stuff on the floor, complete disarray. My workbench, you couldn't even see the workbench, disarray. And what I realized back then is when I was in the military, everything had order and discipline. And that was my routine, order and discipline. Now, by instilling that back into my life of order and discipline, I've created control again, as much as that exists in my world. And it's by creating this slowness. In the SEAL teams, we had a big thing: never run to your death. Never run to your death, right? And in that's a shooting aspect. Well, reality is that's a real aspect. If you're rushing, you're going to make mistakes. And so I'm constantly telling myself, slow down. And that's a big part of my routine, just on a daily thing of problem comes, analyze problem, don't speak, deliver message, right? And those are all the things everybody told me to do all through my life, but I never listened to. Now that I actually listen. And so what it's done for me is I believe I'm more, I don't think I was ever really mentally tough before. I think I was very physically tough and could withstand mentally a lot of pain. I believe I'm very, very mentally tough now and still have some physical toughness, but mentally, I can deal with some very, very significant challenges very easily today that used to cause me chaos and emotion before. So, I think that mental toughness can be built over a long period of time as long as you keep challenging yourself, keep pushing yourself to different levels of what your weaknesses are. My weakness was never physical. My weakness was emotional, and my weakness was knowledge. Like I could never 10 years ago imagine myself sitting in this chair, being an executive of a healthcare company. I know nothing about healthcare until I came here and literally had to write definitions down. So I think as long as you're continually challenging yourself, you are building your mental toughness. It can be physical, great, but what are you doing mentally to do something that you are completely like, I don't know? And I think a lot of people struggle with saying, I don't know.
Yeah. I think in the corporate environment, so many times, you're getting paid to do a job. You're getting paid to be that person of knowledge, to be the subject matter expert. So yeah, I agree. And also that, this is great information for folks. Great insight is, slow it down. I think when we stepped away from the corporate world, we didn't realize how fast we were running on that treadmill. And it was almost a shock of, okay, what do I do now? I got to keep going. And when we found that balance, when we were able to slow it down and start paying attention to what we're doing and giving each challenge, problem, or insight, some attention and just sitting with it, things became much easier, much clearer, and the energy we could bring to it was much purer.
I 100% agree to that. It's, yeah, I don't really have much more to comment on that. That's 1,000% agree. I agree. So
This episode of Fierce Planet Adventures podcast is brought to you by 5 Mountain Coaching, licensed unbeatable mind coaching, integrated accelerated vertical growth across 5 domains of cutting-edge development designed by retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. Learn the Big 4 skills of mental toughness and resiliency. Discover the 6 pillars of performance. Test your mettle with custom-created crucibles across all 5 domains. Visit 5mountaincoaching.com to schedule your free 1-hour unbeatable mind coaching session. That's the number 5, mountaincoaching.com. Begin your journey to becoming unbeatable today.
So we watched one of the videos from the website, and we're kind of interested in the sheep or lion comment. Could you tell us what exactly it means to be a sheep or a lion?
Yeah, it's funny, right? I've always hated the term sheepdog. And guys like, oh, you're a sheepdog. I'm like, actually, I'm not. I'm not a sheepdog because I don't protect sheep, right? Like, I don't want to hang out with sheep. Sheepdogs are white and they look like sheep, intermix, and they sleep with sheep. I don't want to sleep with them. I don't want to be around them. Sheep are weak, stupid animals. Okay. So I'll be clear on this, right? Because I know people are like, ugh, I'm not a cop. I didn't go arrest people. That's not what I did. I chased and hunted bad men. Okay. So what I term this is, I'm a lion. I hunted the wolf. I hunted the wolf where the wolf slept. I went to where the wolf felt comfortable and I hunted him. By virtue of me hunting the wolf, the sheep were safe. Now, a period of time in my life, had that sheepdog crossed my path, I probably would have attacked him too. But because he wasn't physically trying to attack me, and because I wasn't hungry to eat those sheep, we kind of lived in parallel. He stayed away from me. I stayed away from him. I didn't attack those sheep because they were no challenge to me. They offered no challenge. I wanted challenge, so therefore, if I was hungry, I would hunt something that was challenging to me. So when it comes to that mentality, I understand the sheepdog mentality, protect those who can't protect themselves. I get that, and I understand that honorable people do that. But I also think that it causes you to wait to respond to an attack. I never wait to respond to an attack. I am hyper vigilant. I'm self-aware, and I'm always looking around of who is the wolf. There is a wolf out there, and once I see him, I already have a plan of what I'm going to do with him. Now, I may be surrounded by sheep and sheepdogs. They are not part of my plan. They will be protected because I've got that wolf in my sights. And as soon as he moves, as soon as I see the hair on his neck bristle, I'm going. I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting to see I'm got him. And I'll move towards him and put myself in position to attack him violently and aggressively first, you know? And so when I think of the sheepdog mentality, you're waiting to be attacked and respond. I'm not going to wait. You know, I am always looking for and have a plan for what is next. Right. And so that's been my attitude towards that statement, because I think that a lot of people get in there like, oh, we're sheepdogs. Okay. But that means you're waiting to be attacked to respond. And cool. And you can train that way. I'm not training that way. I'm training to take the fight to that wolf, to know where he's at, to look into what he's doing, what his thought processes are, thinking about how he's going to attack me, making sure that I see he's going to come around to the backside of that mountain up the hill, because the sheepdog is laying on the flat ground. So I'm going to put myself on that hill when it's pouring, pissing down rain, middle of the night, and wait. And then as soon as I see anything, I'm going down to him. I think it's, you know, that's the one thing SEALs, we always talk about, is violence of action. You know, we are very violent and we are very aggressive. And that's probably the reason I don't like that term, because we were never taught to sit back in a defensive position. Right? You see it, we're defensive when we're trying to get away. We are offensive until we're defensive. We're not defensive to become offensive.
I guess the question for me there, and I think you gently touched on it earlier, how do you separate being fully aware of your environment from just being paranoid of everyone around you?
You know, I think that I was that way for a long time. And now it's just easy because years of experience have brought me to the place where I just see things. And that's the one thing that anybody who knows me, they'll just go, dude, I don't know how you saw that. I just see things. I can read people. I can read a situation, I can read an environment. And I just, all the time, I'm always planning for what the worst case scenario is. And so like here at our company, when the first mentions of COVID happened, I started making a plan for COVID. And so we ended up hiring 18 SEALs, right? And I was like, I think all transportation is going to shut down. I think we're going to be in massive need of PPE. And so I started finding where I was going to get those things from. And when COVID happened, we were ahead. When air travel shut down, we were transporting people by ground, right? And people were like, and we had a lot of people going, hey, these SEALs, what can they do? I'm like, they solve problems. And that's that lion mentality of we are always looking for how to maximize our opportunities. And that's what, for me, I call it a heightened sense of awareness, not paranoia. I'm never headphones in looking at the ground on my phone. Right. And I preach this to my kids. You're either walking or you're texting. Which one? You can't do both. Right. You can't drive and text. You drive like crap. So choose one or the other. And that's me. Like, I'm always, my head is up, my eyes are always moving. And I have a term that I use all the time, and for everything from coaching football to business, a fight with your eyeballs. All right. Fight with your eyeballs. What is around you? See it. Get a look at it. It tells you a story. You know, eyes, hands, feet. They tell you a story. Right. So I think years ago I was paranoid. Today I'm just aware.
I wonder how much of that may be from the slowing down piece as well.
Well, yeah, that too. And, you know, when you are in high stress environments for long periods of time, it becomes very normal. You know, that's, you know, the term PTSD, somebody gave me the term, he had a different term for PTSD. And it was basically not being in conflict. So traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, ours was not being in post-traumatic stress, not being in stress, which is why a lot of us have PTSD. And I tell people all the time, like, I got PTSD from not being at war. I was comfortable at war. I was able to solve problems. I was able to make decisions. I also know my faults while I was there too, right? But at the same time, when the more you're acclimated to it, which is still mental toughness, the more you do tough things become normal. I've seen the worst case scenarios, and therefore walking around on a day-to-day basis is I'm able to pick out something quickly, even though it doesn't exist all the time.
Dan, your mission isn't just about CEOs and executive teams, and you do a lot in service to others. Can you tell us a bit about what you do to support veterans?
Yeah. So when I was at GSD, I was asked to research a treatment program, and the treatment program involves psychedelics. And so for me, I was like, I've never taken a drug. I smoked some weed in high school, but I was a drinker. And so they're like, hey, you should check this out. And because I was kind of getting into therapeutic means to solve the problem that I was facing. The problem I was facing was great sadness and great anger, right? And so I knew I had a problem, but I never would tell anybody I had a problem. That's the typical mindset, right? So I was always researching things and telling other people about them. And then I would kind of do them like in the shadows. And so people knew that I was researching and looking into things. And so Grant Dawson, he's another SEAL, he said, hey, I want you to look into this. It's called the MAPS program, MAPS, and this psychedelic therapy. I had looked into it. My wife did most of the research, believe it or not. She was in bed, stricken with cancer. And at this point in my life, I couldn't really read or write. I was in complete brain fog. I was in just a very, very dark and bad place. And so she did the research. I turned the paper in, and I got a phone call, and I thought I was getting fired because the paper, I'm a good writer. My wife say, okay writer. So just leave it at that. Her and I butt heads about writing. So I'm kind of they called me in. They're like, what do you think? And I'm like, I think this program has efficacy for everybody but me. All right, I don't need this stuff. And so I was in charge of the money that was granted to the program, and I was asked to go oversee one of the sessions. So myself and another SEAL went down to oversee the sessions. And when we went there, the sessions were done in Mexico because the drug that we take, the two drugs they take are illegal in America. There were other SEALs who were in the treatment program. And what I saw was completely and utterly life-changing. I saw hardened men who I'd been to war with, hardened men who had seen much more combat than me, going on a Friday in a place where I was glad I was there to control them because they were on the verge of out of control, and I could see it, and come out on Sunday as 12-year-old boys, full of peace and love and happiness. And so when I came back, I got to meet Amber Capone, And so they came in to give us a brief, and I pretty much ignored the men when they spoke. And when Amber Capone spoke and she started talking about the problems that her husband Marcus had before going to therapy, I heard my wife's voice. And I heard about the anger. I heard about not being gentle. I heard about many things that bothered me as a husband, as a father. And I went home and talked to my wife about it. My wife was very truthful with me. She was, at that point, we weren't really together. And she said, I hate you. If it wasn't for the kids, I would leave you. And here's a person who prided themselves in saying he was a great father, a great husband, et cetera. And I was not that at that point. So I came back and I called the doctor and I said, I need help. First time in my life, I wanted to quit. And first time in my life, I just didn't give a fuck. I just didn't care. I went down there and I did the therapy. I realized that my trauma had nothing to do with the war. My trauma was all childhood, which I didn't believe in. I never believed in suppression, never believed in mommy daddy issues. All my trauma was childhood trauma. And I faced it. I understood that it happened. I understood that everything along with it, and I forgave. I went through a very curtailed sequence of why me. It is what it is. Thank you. I am who I am because of it, and I forgive you. That you were just a little girl when you started having us, and you did the best you could, and every man you ever with beat the shit out of you and beat us. And so I went through that whole process, and it answered questions for me that I didn't even know I had. Why I hated men, why I preyed on men. All men were just prey to me. Why I was in love with older women, why I was so close to my SEAL brothers. All these questions were answered for me, right? And I came back, and for the first time in my life, I talked. Right? I told other people what I had experienced, and next thing you know, guys started calling me. They were like, "Hey, man, I'm in a bad place." And I did something that I still can't believe to this day I did. I went on Facebook and I talked about it. And I just talked about it because I just felt good about talking. And I probably got 20 replies, PMs of guys saying, "How can I do it?" And at this point, a lot of guys were killing themselves. The SEAL teams were definitely degrading. A lot of guys dying from alcohol abuse. And that's the hidden part of people don't know about. Talk about the 22 Veterans Day. I think it's more like 50. Just from the drinking, I think it's much, much higher. And so guys started calling me, and I started sending guys to therapy. And within about 6-7 months, it was actually a year. I, by chance, had called Michael Cartwright, who was the owner of American Addiction Centers at the time, and kind of told him what I was doing. And, I knew he owned, had all these beds. And I'm like, "How do I get my friends in your beds?" And he's like, "Well, we're not a nonprofit. We're a for-profit. We charge money. We don't really do VA." And I just, for some reason, it made sense for me to try to get my friends into these beds for help. And I came here as a consultant and, helped him solve problems. And next thing you know, he hired me. And it's led me to where I'm at today, which is helping veterans get therapy at zero cost. So using all VA funding or charitable funding to get veterans therapy. And we treated thousands of veterans now. And I've always wondered, I always believed my mission was to be a SEAL. And now I understand that was part of my mission. My mission today is to go on podcasts like this and talk about my issues so that some veteran may be listening and go, "That's me. I'm going to call that guy." And when they call, we built teams in this company who are other veterans who are ready to receive that call. We started with one hospital. Now we have 7 hospitals who are ready to receive that veteran on the worst day of their life, because it's embarrassing to say you have a problem. It's embarrassing to go to therapy, but for that veteran to show up and say, "This isn't embarrassing. This is a normal sequence of events of being under stress for so many years, seeing so many traumatic things," and also to understand that maybe there's something even deeper. Mm-hmm. That's what I do for a living now. And it's difficult. It is emotional at times, but I feel for the first time in my life, in Buds, it says, "Be someone special." The first time in my life, I feel special. I feel like I'm doing something good. So that's what I do,
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful for sure. One thing that came up for me when you're telling your story is that I think as a society, I don't know if it's worldwide, but certainly in America, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, well, probably even for decades or hundreds of years before that, we're told to stuff it down, right? Just don't share it. It's a sign of weakness. And what I hear you saying is, you know what, this is normal, and it's better to find a way to move through it with some help and support, and share your story perhaps with in an environment that's safe. So I think that's a message worth telling, and also worth hearing is, those old ideas, those old paradigms of, men just got to be tough and stuff it down, and not show emotion, not deal with it, or end up dealing with an unhealthy ways, is not relevant anymore. And I think that message needs to get out to a wider audience, not necessarily just the veterans.
Yeah, that's I use the term, the load of the backpack, right? And I understand that for me, I think I was 3 bricks away from breaking. I think every single person has a breaking point. And the difference between difference between people, not men, is that some of us can carry more weight than others. And so a lot of us who can carry a lot of weight, who are not troubled by the weight at that time, look down on people who are breaking under their load. Mm-hmm. What they don't understand is there's going to come a time where that load of you gets heavy. And for me, my load was heavy, but I carried it to the SEAL teams. My load got a little heavier. I carried it. I went into business. My load got heavier. I carried it. But then what I discovered was before my wife, and I keep going deeper and deeper for myself, and before my wife got sick, we really weren't married. We were business partners. We were just 2 people who ran a business who every now and then had some intimacy. But all we ever talked about was business. So prior to her getting sick, I think our marriage was already on a decline anyway. And it wasn't because of any kind of bad things. We had kids. We're very busy with the kids. We're very busy with business, etc. And those are bricks in the backpack, right? Of a personal things, you're like, hold on, I'm the breadwinner. I want more. I want to be with my wife and kids, blah, blah, blah. And then when business started going down, she got sick. It was just more and more bricks. And I would go through these periods of time where I was able to put the cover on the backpack and put no more bricks in, maybe even unload a couple because I got really into fitness. And so my job in Silicon Valley, I was 2 hours a day. I could go to the gym, private gym, our gym, 1 mile away from my office, spend as much time as I wanted there, go back to work, leave work, go back to the gym, because when I was at work, and then I'd go home on the weekends. And so I was able to keep those bricks out of the backpack for a good time, even though the situation was bad. But what I learned is that PTSD is bricks in a backpack. And the therapy that I went through, which is not for everybody, I want to make sure that's very clear, is it's a very dangerous therapy, right? It can kill you. And it should only be used as a last resort for people who are resistant to traditional therapy. What I went through was 20 years of therapy in a weekend by myself, no counselor. After the therapy is over, I started talking to counselors. And I understood then what counselors are and what they do. And I understood that talking does get rid of bricks in your backpack. Now, when you talk to untrained people, you're going to get reactions that are untrained reactions. Suck it up, buttercup. Deal with it. Suck it up. All these other things. That's not what trained people do. Trained people will guide you and give you tools of how to deal with the emotions that are coming out, right? And it's just up to you whether you listen or not. I went through that process, and now I listen and I understand. I also understand the message that is laid out in front of me and how to follow that message. I think that, from a spiritual aspect, I'm not a very religious guy, I'm very spiritual, that our Heavenly Father was giving me messages all along the way. And the final message was, you're not listening. You're not listening. I'm going to give your wife cancer. How you like that? And I listened. Took a long time, but now that I'm like, hold on, I get it. One good thing in my life, I almost destroyed it. Now it is my religion. She is my queen, and I do my best to treat her that way. My whole life has changed. And so talking, getting it out to people who are willing and want to listen, I think is incredibly therapeutic. I now have, I think, 1 or 2 bricks in my backpack where before I had hundreds. And those two bricks, I'm very aware of them, I'm very cognizant of them. And when they start coming up, I go, hold on, time out. Let's address this in the room, right? So I love what I do, and I love what I'm part of, because it was something I had no understanding of. I think I had a fear of. I think I looked down my nose at it, and now I completely and totally understand it, and how it can truly help people if they want to be helped.
That's the key, right? Is they have to be at the point where they want the help. So if I'm understanding you correctly, two components here is there's the mechanism, which is the psychedelic, and we're not talking about going home on the weekend, from work and dropping some acid here. We're talking about a clinical setting, with professionals surrounding you in a safe environment. But there's also the talking aspect, or the talk therapy aspect of it, to help unload the backpack, get rid of some of the bricks. That's great. There's a lot there, right? And I want to thank you for sharing your story, because several points there just really resonated with me, and made me stop and go, wow, there's areas of my life where I can probably unload some of those bricks as well. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge what you do now, and say thank you for helping veterans, near and dear to my heart as being one. But also, just for taking the time to speak with us today and sharing this powerful message of insight and hope, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel for folks. All they have to do is stop and ask for the help.
I think the message that I try to give guys like me, and remember, I stopped going overseas in 2007. So there's guys who've been at war till now, right? They came in, and that's the big thing I'm pushing for, is people understand that it may be 22 veterans a day now. 2 years from now, I truly believe that it will double, because these young men who joined us September 11th are going to retire 20 years straight of war. I know a friend of mine who did 11 straight deployments and never did shore duty his entire 20-year career, and he's not in a good place. And so my big thing, that my final mission in life, is to embed counselors into the SEAL teams. And so we proved this at GSD to be a very viable concept. We have counselors embedded in the teams as they're part of the team. Now, we don't do anything dangerous there. Well, we do rescues, which are highly dangerous. But what I found is that when we brought our first counselor in by accident, everything pretty much I did is by accident, I started noticing guys start taking walks with Kim. And I was like, What I noticed is we didn't have a counseling office. Kim would just go for walks. And more people started taking walks. When I left that company, there were 4 counselors, 4 master's level clinicians who could swing hammers, tie ropes, rappel, cut with saws, and then break away and have conversations. I think that the military in general needs to take master's level clinicians who are right out of college, embed them through a training program side by side. They don't go on missions. They're there to receive guys when they come back from missions. They're there every single day in the chow hall, so people can see their face, and eventually guys will break away and start having conversations with them. Because those conversations are going to keep you from going to a breaking point. And that is the final thing that I'd like to do before I, hang my hat up in the ring and say I'm done.
Well, it makes sense, right? The teams, as I understand it, from an outsider's perspective, you have physical training coaches, you have mental toughness training. So having that other dimension of emotional training, and that's not a pretty word, right? It's a real serious word. It just makes sense to have that as part of the package.
Well, if you think about the 5 mountains, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody does 4 of the 5 almost all the time. How many people do the spiritual side? Spirituality is talking about what's going on inside of you, right? Being able to express in a loving and healing environment about the emotions that you are dealing with from the inside out, and how they apply to you, what drives your beliefs. Very few people are willing to talk about spirituality. And I think the spirituality is what's really has changed my life. Whereas before I largely ignored it.
Again, thank you for sharing your story. It's very inspirational. And I know there are so many people out there in similar situations, not just men. included in that, or veterans that have had trauma and going through things that are afraid to talk about it or afraid to seek help because of the same reasons, that preconceived notion of what they think therapy is. So myself included, it was absolutely a huge turning point, so helpful. And I just commend you for being out there and sharing what you went through for others. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, where can folks learn more about Spartan 7 Adventures and also American Addiction Center?
Yeah, so it's funny. I just created my very first professional website. I've always done all my websites in the past that are not good, so I paid for one. So Spartan7inc.com, and it's Spartan with the number 7, then Inc. Will house Spartan 7 Adventure, Spartan 7 Security, Spartan 7 Medical Treatment Services, and then our coaching platform. I do all the candidate coaching. Michael Osterlink and the other coaches do a lot of the executive coaching. The candidates, I still do all of that stuff to get guys ready to go to buds. I find it just makes me feel good. And then American Addiction Centers, obviously, I think we have, I don't know, 1,000 webpage, bio. I don't know, we get like 1 million hits a month or something like that, crazy on our websites. So AmericanAddictionCenters.com, and you'll find out about our veteran program, which is called our Salute. It's called Salute to Recovery Program. And you'll find out about all the programs that we offer. And my part of the company is obviously the Veteran Initiative, which is expanding the veteran community in our company, and then offering what packages of healing we're going to offer to the veterans, as well as the expansion of those services. My 5-year goal is stem cells, hyperbaric chamber therapy, EMDR. We're already doing, the freaking device, virtual reality.
Virtual.
We're already doing that. Almost everything that we talked about 2 years ago, we're now doing today, and we're just expanding even more and more. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, is letting, what else can I do to help other guys? Because there's no one-stop shop. And then building the roadmap of how to get a guy. My entire goal is start to finish. A guy has an issue, we deal with his issues, we heal his body, we get him a job, all the way through. And so Spartan 7 has been very beneficial in that, as we have over 120 people who work for Spartan 7 now. Most 90% of those are from our therapy program. For some reason the wheels lined up and people called and said they wanted SEALs and special operations military guys to come work on their staffs, and I've built the company around that.
Dan, again, thank you so much. This has just been a really wonderful conversation, and I've just loved hearing about your story. If there's anything we can do to help you out, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know.